Sato is playing in the woods when he sees a glowing golden light. He goes to investigate and finds a girl and an old man coming out of the light. The girl introduces herself as Hime and warns Sato not to reveal what he has seen. She advises him to forget the incident, but offers to be his friend in exchange. A decade later, Hime wakes Sato up for breakfast, unaware that it's the first day of summer vacation. Sato reflects on how Hime, his childhood friend, moved in next door 10 years ago and has lived with her grandfather ever since. He notes how much she has changed since starting high school, particularly her melons. He remembers her shyness and suggests that her distinctive hair color makes it hard to go unnoticed. Hime asserts that as a princess, she needs to be strong. Sato comments that Hime has called herself a princess since she was a kid. During breakfast, Hime moves close to Sato, making him feel awkward. She then picks a grain of rice from his mouth and eats it, causing Sato to feel even more embarrassed. Sato and Hime say goodbye to her grandfather and leave for school. Hime asks about Sato's father, and he tells her he won't be back until after summer break. Sato says he's used to it, despite Hime's concern. Sato notices the rings around Hime's neck and remembers her saying they're for her future husband. He recalls how she asked him to marry her when they grow up, but dismissed the promise as a childhood whim. At school, Hime flexes her test scores to her friends, who praise her intelligence. She claims it's her duty as a princess to be smart. Meanwhile, Sato talks with his friends, who assume Hime is his girlfriend, and ask him how it feels to have one. Sato then receives a message from Hime inviting him to meet her at the summer festival at 6 p.m. in front of the shrine. Sato meets Hime at the shrine and admires her yukata. He compliments her, making her feel embarrassed. They explore the festival, and Hime expresses her excitement. She reminds Sato of the time they got lost at a festival as children, and he held her hand to keep them together. Hime compliments Sato's past coolness, making him question his current status. Sato suggests they grab some food, and Hime agrees. Sato buys some choco bananas, and Hime spots a stuffed toy at a shooting stall. She asks Sato to win it for her. Sato aims for the toy, hesitant to risk their current relationship, but also not wanting things to stay the same forever. He wins the toy for her, and in a romantic moment, they go to the shrine to watch the fireworks. Sato tries to confess his feelings to Hime, but the fireworks interrupt him. They both express gratitude for watching the fireworks together. Hime then reveals a secret she's never told Sato. She's moving away. Sato is surprised, and Hime tells him she's leaving for her grandfather's hometown tomorrow. Sato and Hime watch fireworks together before she leaves. Sato follows a golden light to find Hime, who admits she lied about moving away and is leaving for another world to get married as a princess. She says goodbye to Sato and leaves. Sato follows Hime into the golden light and opens his eyes in a palace, where he sees Hime marrying a prince. The attendees are surprised, and the priest asks Hime to perform the sacred kiss. Sato calls out to Hime, and the prince asks who he is. A monster enters the palace, and people call it an abyssal creature. Hime's grandfather, Alabaster, says the monster is there to take the princess's life. Alabaster tries to fight it, but is defeated when he sees Sato. Alabaster asks Hime to give the ring of light to the prince, but she kisses Sato instead and gives him her ring. The prince gives Sato his sword, and when the monster approaches, the sword glows with the ring and slashes the monster in one strike. Sato wakes up in bed and asks where he is. Hime explains they're in the royal couple's bedchamber. They shared the kiss of oath, and Sato wonders if this means he loves her. Hime says she was supposed to marry the prince, but didn't know him. She didn't want to marry someone like that, so she kissed Sato when she saw him. Sato can't believe this is why she chose him and apologizes for being her hero. Sato meets with palace officials who discuss the political implications of his marriage to the Ring Princess. Meanwhile, maids gossip about the Ring King's strength and origins. Alabaster presents Sato to the entire kingdom, making him feel nervous, and asks him to speak in front of the crowd. The second prince is mentioned to be proud. Sato notices the people cheering for him. Alabaster states that everyone has been waiting for the arrival of the Ring King, and he is the hope for this world. Sato then declares that he is the Ring King. He has traveled from another world to save them and is their hero. The scene ends with Sato addressing the crowd. Sato reflects on his earlier actions while taking a bath. Hime enters and apologizes for causing trouble. She explains that she didn't mean to involve him in the situation with the monster and the ring. Sato decides to stay and protect her, and they discuss their friendship. Hime reveals that the wedding was just a formality, and Sato tells her that he's glad she chose him as her husband. They both affirm their important friendship to each other. They hear bells ringing outside and wonder what's happening. They head to the palace gate, where soldiers notice they're half-dressed and ask if they were doing something unholy. Sato says they haven't done it yet. A soldier informs them that they are under attack by abyssal creatures. The monster Sato killed was probably a scout. They ask Sato to help them and look at him with expecting eyes. Sato mentions he has no combat experience, but Alabaster says he still has to fight since he has the ring. Hime tells Sato she can count on him and gives him an axe. Alabaster explains that the Ring of Light is evil's bane and gives its wielder banishing light and tremendous power. The ring can create the strongest weapons against the abyss. Sato doesn't know much about the world situation, but his life is at stake, so he will do his best to help. Hime kisses Sato and asks him to vanquish the evil beings and save their world from turmoil. Sato saves a maid from abyssal creatures using a ring powered by his bond with Hime. After defeating 3 monsters, he exhausts his power. Alabaster explains the ring's power and offers to help. When the Knight of the Abyss King arrives, he notices Sato's ring of light and hesitates. Sato attacks but breaks his weapon, likely saved by the ring. Alabaster tells Sato to run, and they flee into the castle, pursued by abyssal creatures. Alabaster explains that the knight is a powerful monster. Sato, Alabaster try to escape the castle, but the Knight of the Abyss King blocks their way. The second prince of the Gasaurus Empire, Mars, attacks the knight and prepares a carriage for their escape. They learn that the monsters have seized the southern tower, and Mars introduces himself to Sato. Alabaster warns that the Abyss King is after the Ring King, and the monsters will search for them once they leave the castle. He explains that it's impossible to defeat the Knight of the Abyss King without the power of light. Sato thinks he must defeat the knight, but Alabaster says they are on the run because Sato's power as the Ring King is still weak. To manifest his full power, Sato needs to gather the other 4 rings by marrying the other 4 princesses. The group books 2 rooms at an inn. Alabaster plans to stay with the princess, but the prince suggests she share a room with her husband. Later, Alabaster explains to Sato that the Ring King's duty is to seal away the resurrected Abyss King by marrying 5 princesses and collecting their magic rings, which command the elements of light, fire, water, wind, and earth. Sato and Hime argue, and she leaves in tears. Sato searches for her and encounters Mars, who thanks Sato for taking on the burden of the Ring King. Mars directs Sato to Hime in the backyard. Sato finds Hime and tells her he likes her as more than a friend, reassuring her that his decisions are his own. Hime expresses her desire to be his real wife and help him with his duty. They return to their room, but Sato hesitates, wanting their first time together to be special. The next morning, Alabaster tells them they will be heading to the country of the elves, Ramka of the Wind. He mentions that the Ring of Wind is the heirloom of the elves, and that the elves are a race of beauty. They see the elven princess, who thinks the Ring King is disgusting. Alabaster explains that the valley is the homeland of the beautiful, intelligent elves, which used to be a sacred place of knowledge. However, 50 years ago, a barrier of gusts surrounded Ramka, preventing invasion. They encountered a bear, But some elves save them and take them to the palace. The elven princess refuses to give Sato her ring, saying that kissing is too lewd. Sato encounters Prince Jade of Ramka, who is obsessed with his sister Nefrites. Jade, believing Sato to be the new Ring King, has him imprisoned, stating that Nefrites is too young for marriage at 54 years old and plans to keep Sato locked up for 80 years until she matures. After 3 days of losing hope, Sato is approached by an elven woman who questions his quest for the 5 rings. Sato expresses his desire to make Hime happy, which the woman finds odd given his power. Admiring his dedication, she decides to help him escape, revealing that Jade locked him up despite knowing he's the only one who can oppose the Abyssal King. She believes their kingdom's barrier is a prison. The woman leads Sato to the room containing the Ring of Wind. However, Nefrites arrives, conversing with statues of her parents and refusing to let Sato take the ring, fearing abandonment. Nefrites tells Sato and the woman that she will defend the peace of her nation, as her mother told her to. The woman reveals that the statues are actually the former elven king and queen turned to stone. Sato screams in surprise, and Nefrites hears him. She asks for the intruder to come out, and Sato reveals himself. Nefrites screams and faints, and Sato catches her before a soldier arrives. Jade discovers that Nefrites is missing and interrogates everyone in the palace. Meanwhile, Sato and Nefrites are in a room, and Nefrites wakes up surprised to see the Ring King. Sato tries to calm her down, but she becomes defensive. Jade learns that Sato has escaped and taken Nefrites. The elder tells him that they have eloped, and Jade is shocked. The elder tells Jade to face the truth and that Nefrites will never tell him she loves him again. Jade is terrified and mentions that his parents still have the Ring of Wind and their nation is protected by the barrier. Jade says that Nefrites doesn't need to inherit the Ring of Wind. Jade leaves to search the elder's residence. In the elder's residence, Sato has washed their clothes, and Nefrites apologizes for making him do so. She admits that she was scared of Sato because he is an outsider, but Sato assures her that he is not special and his world is peaceful. Nefrites expresses interest in the outside world, but is scared to learn the truth. She has only read about it in books and never left the palace. Nefrites tells Sato that she feels trapped and powerless. Sato reassures her that they are alike and that he came to this world for love, not special powers. He encourages her to keep trying, and Nefrites expresses excitement about living in Sato's world someday. Sato promises to take her there. Sato tells Nefrites that he became the Ring King to be with Hime, but he has no intention of forcing Nefrites to marry him. Nefrites decides to do her best, and once Jade arrives, she convinces him that Sato is not who he thinks he is. Jade gets angry and accuses Sato of abducting Nefrites. The elder intervenes and tells Jade that she is responsible for Sato's escape. Jade agrees to let the elder keep an eye on Sato, but forbids him from seeing Nefrites again. Sato talks to Hime and she asks if he's hurt. He assures her that he's fine and mentions that he has gotten closer to Nefrites. Peridot, the oldest elf in Lanka, arrives and explains why Nefrites is the way she is. Her mother was not the first in line to inherit the throne, and her older sister fell in love with a human traveler. The elves feared that the traveler would take the Ring of Wind, so they banished him. The princess put a curse on the nation before leaving, saying that it would be consumed by the abyss and the inheritance of the ring would be severed. Nefrites' parents then inherited the ring and used its power to surround the nation in a barrier of wind, turning themselves into stone. They made a deal with Nefrites to keep her from leaving the barrier. Alabaster informs Sato that they must abandon the Ring of Wind for now, as the Abyss King's army is approaching, and they need to prioritize collecting other rings. He states that Sato cannot match the Knight of the Abyss King. Jade, skeptical of the Ring King's story, is relieved they're leaving until he learns that the abyssal creatures have broken through the wind barrier and are attacking the city. As the city faces chaos, Sato and his group decide to stay and protect the ring. Hime powers up Sato with a kiss, and they fight the invading creatures. The elder informs Nephrides of the breach, but she believes their brother will handle it and vows to stay. However, she questions if living without desire is truly living. Jade tells Sato that Nephrides can negate all magic attacks, making it impossible for him to win. Determined to protect his sister, Jade plans to free her from the fate of the rings. Sato struggles against the knight, and Alabaster suggests retreating, but Sato refuses as the monster targets the Ring of Wind. Hime, feeling jealous of Nephrides, seeks her out, and the elder notices. Alabaster insists on retreat, but Sato is adamant about protecting the ring. The elder informs Sato that the Princess of Life has gone to help Nephrides. Peridot encourages Sato, praising his amazing wife, and joins the fight to buy time. Hime asks Nephrides to marry Sato, explaining that her parents died to protect the ring. Nephrides feels useless and can only be protected. She tells Hime that her parents cast the wind barrier so she wouldn't inherit the ring and can't betray them. Hime agrees they are not the same, but Nephrides is the only one who can save everyone now. She is not helpless like Hime. The Elder and Jade are fighting the Knight of the Abyss King, even though they have no chance. Nephrides wonders if she can make a difference. She and Hime arrive with a hammer, breaking the statues of the Elven King and Queen, and disable the barriers surrounding Ramka. Nephrides gives Sato the Ring of Wind and kisses him. Jade worries about the attacks without the barrier, but Nephrides reassures him. Sato uses the ring's power to emit light, wiping out the monsters in Ramka and weakening the Knight of the Abyss King. He tries to defeat her, but is overpowered. After destroying her mask, he faints. Sato wakes up with Nephrides by his side, and the Elder praises his display of power. An elven woman, Sumuragdi, thanks him for saving Ramka. Alabaster reveals that Sumuragdi, the elder sister of the late queen, was controlled by the Abyss King through a black ring of wind. Sumuragdi explains she was cursed and manipulated by the Abyss King, who lost his physical form and was sealed away after battling the Ring King. However, his familiars continue to attack, and he can create black rings for his knights, posing a significant threat. Sato realizes he must collect all the rings quickly, but is too weak from using too much power. The Elder explains that his bond with the princesses protected him. Nephrides offers to take him to a healing spring in the palace. Meanwhile, Sumuragdi asks the Great Sage about a human she met 50 years ago. The Great Sage reveals that the human lives peacefully in a faraway land and always wanted her to be happy. He gives her a pendant from the man. Nephrides visits her parents' grave, finding purpose in assisting the Ring King. She decides to join Sato and his group, fulfilling her duty as the Ring Princess and expressing her desire to see the outside world. Sato promises to take her to his world someday. Sumuragdi asks Peridot if the Ring Princess will find happiness, and Peridot, one of the earliest Ring Princesses, reveals that none of the previous Ring Princesses, including the first, had happy endings. However, she believes the new Ring King's bashful nature might bring change. Sumuragdi overhears that the Great Sage is named Alabaster and realizes he is the human she once loved. Mars asks Alabaster about their next destination, and he mentions the Kingdom of Water, which excites Mars. However, their plans change when the moving Kingdom of Fire, Nida, approaches. Alabaster explains it's a mobile country of catfolk knights, and they decide to seek the Ring of Fire there first. As they board the moving country, Sato, Nephrides, and Hime explore the bustling market inside. Nephrides is knowledgeable about the catfolk's history, explaining they became a traveling tribe offering armed services after losing their land during the first Ring King's era. While explaining, Nephrides and Hime get separated from the group. They encounter catfolk who direct them to the arena, the most noticeable landmark. Sato, worried about his wives, is reassured by Alabaster that Nida is a safe place. The cat girls, more interested in Mars, invite him for tea, deeming Sato not strong. Mars tells the cat girls they are there to meet the princess, and they are disappointed to hear that he is another admirer. Meanwhile, Hime and Nephrides eat crepes in front of the arena. Nephrides appreciates how kind Hime is and mentions that traveling with them makes her feel like her parents are watching over her. Nephrides apologizes to Hime for Sato's attention towards her, but Hime assures her that she doesn't mind. Nephrides admits that she is a delicate princess who has been safeguarded for so long. Sato and the others meet up with Hime and Nephrides at the arena. Hime tells Sato that something is not right, as she just saw a man get beaten. They are invited to a matchmaking session with the princess, and they head inside the arena. They see the cat princess easily defeating an opponent. She notices Sato and tells him that to become her husband, he must be stronger than her. She attacks him, and Sato is unable to defend himself. The cat princess is disappointed and mentions that Sato is too weak and she's willing to do a rematch. The scene cuts to Sato having a practice session with Mars, but he can't land a single hit. During dinner, the chef tells Sato that only strong warriors can hope to marry the ring princess of fire. They invited men from various races to have a matchmaking session with her because no one in the country can beat her. Sato wonders if he can defeat her, and Alabaster mentions that he won't stand a chance with just his sword talent, but he might be able to defeat her with the power of the rings. Sato thinks using magic seems like cheating, but the chef mentions that magic is also considered strength in combat, and many mages have taken part in the matchmaking, but all have been defeated. The chef tells Sato to eat up since he can't win on an empty stomach. The scene cuts to Sato watching Grenard having another matchmaking session, where she defeats her opponent in a single strike. Later, Grenard finds Sato sitting alone and asks if his training is over. Sato mentions that he is on a break right now, and after this, Alabaster will give him some magic training. Alabaster arrives for Sato's training after dinner. After the training, Sato goes to the bath with Mars. Mars compliments Sato's performance, and Sato is surprised by Mars' martial arts skills. Mars explains that he must be both a fighter and a scholar as a member of the royal family. His brother and father are even more impressive. Sato asks if he would have a chance against Grenard with the power of the rings, and Mars thinks he would probably lose in swordplay. Afterwards, Grenard comes to Sato and asks him to scrub her back. She is willing to throw the match to Sato, but they would have to make it look convincing. Sato refuses her pity and tells her that he will fight her with all his strength. Grenard tells him to do his best and leaves. Sato trains hard to improve his swordsmanship after facing humiliation. Nephrides wakes him up one morning, revealing the healing power of the ring and encouraging him to use the ring's power to fulfill his mission as Ring King. Determined, Sato continues training. During practice, Sato surprises Mars with his progress. Mars advises him to focus on countering Grenard's moves rather than expecting to win outright. He believes the ring's power will help. At the rematch, a defeated knight influenced by a black ring interrupts Sato and Grenard's fight, summoning abyssal creatures. The Catfolk Knights and Grenard's forces handle the monsters, while Sato and Grenard face the controlled knight. Grenard struggles against his flames, prompting Sato to help by dispersing them with wind magic. Together, they defeat the knight and discover the influence of the Black Ring. Impressed by Sato's capability, Grenard acknowledges him as the Ring King and proposes marriage. Sato declines, wanting her recognition through combat instead. They spar again, with Grenard landing a hit on Sato. Nephrides notices Hime's silent support for Sato, who refuses to rely on the ring's power, aiming to win on his own merit for the sake of his love. During the fight, Sato hears a voice from the rings, guiding him to anticipate Grenard's moves, enhancing his focus in combat. Sato hesitates, but the voice tells him not to worry and to consider it an opportunity he earned himself. He manages to counter Grenard's attack and defeat her. Grenard is shocked and kisses Sato, praising him for his victory. She mentions the tradition in Nida that the defeated must serve the winner wholeheartedly and tries to make arrangements. But Sato stops her and tells her to wait. Grenard wonders if her body is not to his liking. The next morning, Grenard announces that they are holding a wedding banquet. Sato's wives attend the banquet, and Grenard tells everyone that the Ring King has returned, and they can now become his fellow warriors again. Grenard tells Sato that she is glad he wanted to earn her recognition, and Sato tries to tell her about the mysterious voice, but she dismisses it as his determination. The scene cuts to the Ring King's group in the Kingdom of Water. Sato thinks that the place is bustling despite being at the border. Alabaster tells him that Mars had something to tend to and went ahead. A girl approaches Sato and introduces herself as Saphir, the Princess of Masa. She tells him that she is a big fan and will be his wife from now on, much to the surprise of the other princesses. Sato is embarrassed as Saphir laughs and thanks Alabaster for their aid. In their journey, Saphir tells Sato that he will be the king of this country and must bring stability to it. She warns him to be prepared. Sato asks what's happening in this country, and Saphir explains that it's going to be destroyed at this rate. Soldiers arrive and ask Saphir to return to the palace. She wonders if there will be a problem if the Ring King joins her, as she has made him her husband. The soldiers' leader understands and allows them to head to the palace by carriage. They notice a waterfall, and Alabaster mentions it's a landmark of this country. Nefriti states that beyond the waterfall is the Old Kingdom of Earth, also known as the Dark Kingdom, where the Abyss King resides. Saphir shows them that the Empire's soldiers are everywhere, and Masa no longer has its own army. Sato remembers that the Empire is Mars's country. Saphir tells him that the Jazara Empire is the largest country ever found by humanity, and is joining hands with various countries to expand its territory. Sato learns that the soldier leader earlier was actually the first prince of Jazara, an undefeated general in charge of executing the emperor's orders and a conqueror who has seized many countries. Alabaster mentions that they only got away because they are one of the Ring Kingdoms. Sato wonders if the Empire is the bad guy, and Saphir states that it should be obvious. She mentions that they invaded their country under the guise of protecting them from abyssal creatures, but it was just an excuse. Grenard adds that some people share that idea, but the truth is that they have united everyone to prevent the resurrection of the Abyss King. Upon arriving at the palace, they are attacked by monsters, but Sato easily defeats one using the power of his rings. The king meets with Sato, and Saphir explains that her father wanted to keep her in the palace to prevent her from giving the ring to Sato. The woman beside the king is confused, and the king mentions that an army of monsters is approaching. He advises Saphir not to act on her own under these circumstances. The king then mentions that, just as the woman predicted, the Ring King now has the ring, and his kingdom will face even greater calamity. He wonders why Sato had to come there, and starts coughing. The woman takes him to rest, and Sato asks Saphir if she is her mother. Saphir explains that the woman is just a nurse that the palace hired at some point, and her father grew dependent on her. Saphir meets her twin sister, Saphira, and wonders why she married Sato. Saphira mentions that Saphir could have married someone better, and asks if she did it for her. Saphir tells Saphira that she doesn't have to marry the Ring King now. Mars calls out to Saphira, apologizing for his past actions and reminding her of the promise he made to her. Saphira rejects him, and Mars goes after her. Sato asks Saphir what's going on, and she explains that Mars used to be Saphira's lover. In the past, the Jazara Empire tried to invade Masa, but couldn't take it by force, so they hoped to strengthen diplomatic ties by learning from Masa's long history. Mars and Saphira became close and fell in love, but Mars had a secret mission to deliver confidential information about Masa to the Empire. He never completed his mission and left Masa, promising to return for Saphira. The scene cuts to Mars talking to Saphira, telling her that his love for her hasn't changed. Saphira asks why he didn't become the Ring King, and Mars explains that he didn't think he was worthy of the role. Saphira becomes confused and runs away. Saphir mentions that the seer showed up after Mars left, and at first, no one believed her. However, her predictions started to come true, and her father thought that the seer's predictions could help him fend off the monsters. This is why he kept her in the palace, and he became dependent on her. Sato wonders if the seer was sent by the Empire, and Saphir thinks that there must be a connection between them. The scene then cuts to the seer meeting with some men and telling them to kill the Ring King and get his rings for the glory of their great king. They try to assassinate Sato at night, but Grenard is waiting for them and beats them up. She realizes that Saphir was right about the attack and notices that the assassins are humans. They manage to escape using a smoke bomb, and Grenard suspects that the Empire sent them. The next day, Sato finds out about the assassination attempt, and another assassin tries to kill him. But Alabaster saves him without knowing. Saphir warns Sato that the seer hasn't given up on her plan yet, and advises him to stay vigilant even when he's pretending to let his guard down. Sato goes to Mars and notices that he seems troubled. Mars admits that it's partly his fault that Masa is in its current state, and that he feels like he has failed them. Sato asks why Mars let him become the Ring King, and Mars explains that he could have become married to Saphir if he hadn't. However, he felt that the burden of being the Ring King was too heavy for him. Sato wonders if there's more to it, and suggests that Mars could take the rings for himself if he has a reason to be the Ring King. Mars mentions that seeing the look on Sato's face reminded him of Saphira, and he didn't want to get in their way. He regrets not being more assertive and taking what he wants, but he believes that Sato is more worthy of being the Ring King since he abandoned everything for Mars' sake. Later that night, Mars talks to his brother about reconsidering their involvement in Masa. His brother mentions that it was their father's order to send reinforcements and that Mars still hasn't been forgiven for going against the order of not becoming the Ring King. However, Mars has earned the Ring King's trust, and the Emperor considers this his redemption. The seer then approaches Mars and tells him to take the rings for himself, as it is the Emperor's order. She warns him that in 3 days an army of monsters will attack Masa, and he should use the chaos to kill the Ring King. In the palace, Mars receives counsel from a seer who claims he's destined to atone for his sins by becoming the Ring King and reclaiming the princess's love. Initially skeptical, Mars reluctantly accepts an ancient sword from the seer, capable of manipulating mana flow and defeating the Ring King. The seer hopes Mars will bring the rings back to the Empire. Mars reflects on his father's disappointment in him, recalling his failure and the pressure to prove himself worthy. Feeling he has lost everything, Mars decides to take action, his resolve strengthened when the crystal on his sword glows. Elsewhere, Slaughter announces a campaign against the army of monsters, leaving Sato to protect the palace as a last resort. Meanwhile, soldiers battle abyssal creatures, reporting that a giant monster near the palace is being monitored but not engaged. At the palace, Sato and the others spot the approaching monster. As Sato is distracted, Mars attacks him, revealing his mission to kill the Ring King and retrieve the rings for the Empire. Alabaster holds off the monster while Sato confronts Mars, who admits he befriended Sato only to betray him now. In the ensuing fight, Sato tries to reason with Mars, who blocks Sato's magic using the altered mana flow of his sword. Sato hesitates to use the full power of the rings against Mars, not wanting to attack him. Sato realizes he has never defeated Mars despite being weaker and senses Mars's hesitation. Saphir informs Sato that Mars is fighting to steal the rings. During their battle, Mars lands a hit on Sato, but hesitates when Sato reveals his belief in Mars's inherent kindness. Mars asks Sato to end him, but Sato refuses, declaring Mars as his comrade needed for their journey. At the voice's suggestion, Sato destroys the crystal on Mars's sword hilt. The seer becomes enraged, and the abyssal creature breaks free from Alabaster's hold, threatening the princesses. Grenard saves them, but the creature grabs Saphira, leading Sato to fear she is taken hostage. The seer appears, upset over Mars's actions, ruining her plans. Alabaster realizes that the seer is working with the monsters and has put a curse on Mars' sword. The seer mentions that she has only awakened Mars' desires and threatens to kill Saphira if they try anything strange. The seer summons an abyssal creature and declares that she will kill the Ring King. Saphir arrives and calls Sato a fool, but kisses him before transforming into a dragon using the power of the rings. She devours the seer's monster and the seer flees. Saphir turns back to normal and Mars apologizes to Sato. The king thanks Sato and his group for saving Masa and offers Masa's full support as a ring kingdom. He also thanks the heroes from the Empire and mentions that Masa will now defend itself. The general promises to rush to their aid if needed. The general realizes a conspiracy is brewing and decides to return to the capital immediately. He hopes Mars can also come home someday, and Mars agrees. In the next scene, the seer meets with the emperor. She tells him that a small nation like Masa shouldn't matter to him and suggests that they can conquer more kingdoms together if she can command monsters. However, the seer tries to control the emperor with his innermost desires, and he slashes her. The emperor states that he only listened to her because their interests aligned, and that he knows the Abyss King cannot be trusted. He reveals that the seer worked for the Abyss King, and declares that they no longer live in the world of gods, but in the world of men. The emperor then kills the seer, stating that he will eradicate anyone who stands in his way, including the Ring King and the Abyss King. The group tries to convince Saphir to continue traveling with them. Saphir is hesitant to leave her home and family, but Grenard questions if fear is the reason. Saphir points out that even Nephrides, a former recluse, joined them, despite their age difference. Unable to accept her younger sister accompanying them, Saphir seeks reassurance from Saphira, who promises to protect their father and Mars while Saphir is gone. The sisters share a heartfelt goodbye, with Saphira encouraging Saphir to stay safe and use her ring's power to protect Mars. Sato and his group travel to the Earth Kingdom searching for the next ring princess in the ruined dwarven city of Idonokan. They discuss the extinction of dwarves during a past conflict and wonder if more ring princesses even exist. Their journey reveals a desolate land with remnants of giant monsters and no signs of recent life. Despite the Empire's plans, the group debates the importance of finding the rings. Alabaster warns them of the Abyss King's immense power and humanity's dire situation. After hearing Alabaster's story, Sato becomes worried, but Alabaster reassures him that if the Abyss King comes to life, the Ring King will also return. The group finds the kingdom in ruins, and Alabaster explains they had fought off monsters before. Saphir decides to wait there while the others search for the Ring of Earth. Grenard warns her about the nearby Abyss domain, but she insists on staying. Grenard offers to carry her, but she declines, feeling embarrassed. The group searches the palace and finds an automaton in the throne room. Alabaster explains the dwarves' use of automatons and contraptions driven by mana. They consider checking the underground tunnels for the ring. Suddenly, an automaton starts moving and tries to attack Sato, who manages to throw it aside. They notice a black ring on its hand and realize the Abyss King can control machines. The automaton speaks of fighting on the same side and perishing, confusing Sato. It separates him from the group using earth magic and attacks him. Sato blocks the attack, and the automaton reveals it's not from this world and doesn't care about its fate. Sato counters that he may not have been born here, but the people who live here are his loved ones and worth protecting. Alabaster and the others then break the wall. Hime kisses Sato, empowering him to use the Ring of Light to defeat an automaton. Nephrides worries about the dwarves' potential hostility, but Alabaster reassures her they can't be certain. The rings on the defeated automaton vanish, signaling the Abyss King's complete resurrection. Abyssal creatures swarm the palace, prompting the group to flee outside, where they confront a horde of monsters. During the intense battle, Sato exhausts himself, Alabaster uses a flash of light to blind the monsters, allowing a retreat. He erects a barricade, but an approaching army of monsters indicates the Abyss King's unstoppable return. Alabaster grimly acknowledges their impending doom, noting that without all 5 rings, the Ring King cannot unleash his true power. Sato suggests fleeing to find the Ring of Earth, but Alabaster warns that the Abyss King will pursue them relentlessly. Nephrites asks for guidance. Alabaster decides to create a portal for Sato and the others to escape, while he and Mars stay behind to hold off the Abyss King. Sato hesitates to leave, but Alabaster insists, urging him to free the princesses from their fate and care for Hime. With a heartfelt goodbye, Alabaster sends them through the portal, confirming Mars's resolve to defend their world to the end. He apologizes to Mars for involving him in this battle and prepares to face the Abyss King as they vanish back to the human world. The girls go shopping and try on different clothes, then go to a restaurant to eat. They discuss their situation and how to return to their world, but have no leads. They decide to look for spots with dense mana to connect to their world. Later, they take a bath in a bathhouse. Hime sleeps in Sato's room because it's cramped with 4 people. Hime tells Sato that her grandfather left her a home and money and asked her to live a normal life in this world. Sato returns to school and Grenard makes friends in the neighborhood. Nephrites starts commuting to the library to learn about this world, and Saphir is constantly lost in thought. Sato is seen in the mountains at night, where he has been sneaking out every night. Hime finds him and mentions that the princesses are not fine with their current situation. She reminds Sato of her grandfather's wish to free the princesses from the ring's fate and asks him to find happiness with her in this world. However, they are interrupted by a shining light, and a girl appears from a nearby shrine. She introduces herself as Amber Edenoan, the Ring Princess of Earth, and explains that she is an automaton created by the surviving dwarves after the war with the Abyss King. They knew their race would eventually die out, so they created a vessel to protect the ring and transported it to this world to prevent anyone from stealing it. Sato is surprised to learn that the last princess was in his world all along. Amber tells Sato that she has waited for centuries for the Ring King to appear and that they should bind the rings together to defeat the Abyss King and bring peace to Aurelus. However, Hime stops her and tells her that Aurelus is already lost, as the Abyss King has returned and they had to flee. Sato has no intention of going back there. Amber is disheartened, thinking that her destiny will remain unfulfilled, and asks Sato to come to her if he changes his mind. Sato and Hime debate keeping Amber a secret. Hime wants a normal life, but Amber is determined to find the Ring King. Sato spends time with Amber, learning about her purpose and her desire to return him to his world. Torn, Sato eventually agrees to return with Amber to seal the evil threatening their world. Hime, heartbroken but relieved of her burden, confesses her love for Sato. Their moment is interrupted by Amber's return spell. Grenard appears, ready to join them back to their world. Sato and the others return to the other world and arrive at the palace of Idon Noan. They find it too dark to see, but Amber turns herself into a light source. They discover dead monsters and soldiers, recognizing them as Imperial soldiers. They hear noises and see the Imperial army fighting monsters. The rings react to the Abyss King, who is among the monsters. The Imperial army attacks the Abyss King, but their attacks have no effect, and he wipes them out. Sato decides to assist the army, and his wives encourage him. He uses the power of the rings to wipe out the monsters along the way, and makes it to the Abyss King. He attacks him, but the Abyss King easily deflects his attack. The previous Ring King tells Sato that he has done well to make it this far. Sato combines the rings into one and releases their power, striking the Abyss King with all his might. The attack wipes out all the monsters in the area and cuts the Abyss King in half, but he survives. The previous Ring King is surprised, and Sato falls, having used all his strength. The Abyss King prepares to attack Sato, but Grenard stops him. The other princesses arrive, and they all fight the horde of monsters summoned by the Abyss King. Grenard and Amber struggle to keep up with the sheer number of monsters. Sato tries to use his ring to muster his strength, but fails and faints. His wives try to wake him up, but he doesn't respond, and they fear the worst. Sato dreams of marrying Hime, but the dream turns into a nightmare as the Abyss King attacks him. He remembers his promise to Hime and wakes up to find Alabaster in front of him. They are flying on a giant bird, and Grenard tells him that Alabaster saved them. Alabaster mentions that they need the power of the rings, and Sato wonders if Mars is safe. Alabaster tells him that Mars is safe thanks to Smaragdi, who ate the monsters surrounding them. Smaragdi explains that watching Alabaster gave her life a wonderful meaning. Sato and his group return back and find the city under attack by the Abyss King's forces. Despite Sato's efforts, the Abyss King survives their battle. Alabaster explains that the situation is worsening and they need to draw out more power from the rings. They decide to undergo wife training, quote unquote, to strengthen their bonds with Sato and increase their power. The scene ends with Sato's wives waiting for him in his room, offering to help him replenish his energy. And wouldn't you know it, that's the end of today's recap. If you liked this one, maybe check out some of our other videos. We're building up a huge collection. We try to read all of our comments, and we're wondering what we should cover next. Why don't you tell us down below? And while you're at it, like this video and subscribe. And have a great day. See you next time.